Today on the Transplant Helper, I'm going to be answering several viewers' questions, most of which, to be honest with you, I've already replied back to the message, to the email, to the tweet, whatever. But nonetheless, I thought I would sit down here in front of the camera today and share those same questions and answers with you, because chances are you may be asking similar questions. Stay tuned.
Hit the subscribe button and click the bell notification to become part of the Transplant Helper community.
Hey folks, welcome to the Transplant Helper again today. My name is Jim Merle, and today I thought I'd sit down for just a moment here and talk with you and answer a few of the viewers' questions I've actually already answered in the past via email, via Facebook message, tweet, text, whatever. But I thought I'd sit down and answer those questions again so that if you had not already heard of that, or maybe you just wasn't the one who asked the question, you could get the answers nonetheless. Okay, so let me give you the answers on these questions. I picked out 6, 7 of these right here. I'll go through and read through and just answer them the best I can in a timely manner. Question number one was asked, where did you first go after transplant? Now, this is certainly going to be one of those questions where, well, let me encourage you, please, please, please do as I say, not as I do, okay? Because what I did back then, probably if I had it to do over, I might adjust it out, change it just a little bit. So do as I say, not as I do on this question. So where did I first go after transplant? The answer is simple. I left the transplant center maybe around 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And by 7 o'clock, it was on a Wednesday night, I was in Bible study with my church family. That's the way I did it. Now, I know the doctors do not advise that. As a matter of fact, it is very dangerous, highly dangerous when you leave the transplant center, especially within those first few weeks. You're so immunosuppressed. It's extremely dangerous to go out and be in the middle of a large crowd at that time, okay? But nonetheless, I did it, okay? But let me tell you, I put forth some special precautions in order to make that possible. Mainly, actually called ahead to the church, told them there that I was going to be coming that night after I got out of the hospital. I was going to be coming, my wife and I, but we were going to be coming in late and leaving early, and we asked that they announce before we got there to please ask people to keep their distance, okay? And I think even then I said, stay like 6 feet away from me and my wife. We don't need any handshakes. We don't need any hugs. Just stay away, okay? We don't want to get sick. And of course, we did exactly what we said, and thankfully, the church did exactly what we had asked, and that is everybody kept their distance. They were very friendly, very loving, very caring, concerned, but at the same time, they kept their distance from us. And I can remember I actually wore a mask and even gloved up. I put on surgical gloves to go to the Bible study that night, and we kept our distance, and they stayed back from us. So people came up and they spoke, but I kindly asked the few who didn't quite understand to please don't touch my wife either, because she's ended up going to touch me later, and we just don't need to pass anything around. Now, would I do that exactly the same way now? I'm not sure. It's not the best advice in the world, but you asked the question, where did I first go? That's where I went. I went to church. I went to Bible study. That's just what I chose to do. So question number 2 is asked here, what is the most important thing that I should know about transplant? Now, I'm going to add to that maybe something I didn't know or didn't understand pre-transplant. Now, if you've been watching this particular program for a while, you already understand a lot of what I try to do here is to give you the answers to questions and help you along with situations in a lot of areas in which there's no other information, okay? I remember going into transplant, searching Google, searching YouTube like you are now, all over social media, wherever, asking tons of questions, doing a ton of research, and there were always those black holes where no information existed. There was just no answers to some of the questions I had. And so when I think back now, I think probably the one thing I wish I had known more about, or at least comprehended, understood more pre-transplant that I'd like to get across here, is just how difficult transplant can be. Now, is transplant worth it? Yes, hands down. I say that all the time. I say it every time. Transplant is worth it. However, it is extremely hard when you're pre-transplant to really get a grasp of just how difficult the process can be. You know, I refer to it here all the time as being on a journey, and that's what it is. And it can seem like it's a very long journey at times because things can really get hard, okay? There are always going to be bumps in the roads, spots where you can, slip up, lose your footing for sure. And I wish I had comprehended that more. And I tried back pre-transplant especially. I actually went to clinic. I met several patients who had already been through the process. I went and visited patients who were going through the process, who were still, in the hospital pre and post-transplant. I tried to get a grasp for that, but I don't think anyone was able to really communicate with me how hard it could be. Now, maybe that was because some of those people were 10 years or so out of transplant and they'd forgotten it all, or maybe it was because for many of them it was just so fresh in their minds and what was going on with them in the moment that they didn't have a grasp of it yet. So I try to share here on the program a lot, even some of those videos I don't want to do, how difficult the process can be and kind of how we need to prepare our emotions and our minds to work through that. Okay, so it's not easy, but it's worth it. And I really wish, that's one of the things I wish I had known before transplant that I'm beginning to grasp now. Question number 3. Asked this and says, you said that you were born with a congenital heart defect. Were you afraid that your children may inherit the same? And the answer to that is very simply yes. We were actually very, very afraid of that. I can remember back when we first found out my wife was pregnant with my 17-year-old daughter, she is now, we were really concerned about that. We didn't know for sure what the chances were, at least, of a child inheriting this from me. Now, my parents did not have the defect that I have, but there was a long line or a long history of defects and of of cardiac problems in my family, so we automatically assumed it may be something there that's coming down the gene pool that we could pass on. Now, thankfully, at the time, I was still seeing a pediatric cardiologist. Even though I was on up in age, 20 some odd years old, I was still seeing a pediatric cardiologist. He was still handling my case 100%, and he was kind enough to understand where we were coming from and kind enough to actually bring my wife in and to do, sonograms, echoes, and that sort of thing, not just on her, but on the baby itself, and to try to check in and see if there was going to be a problem, and then to be reassuring to us that if a problem were to arise, that he was ready and prepared to take care of that. So it would not be what it was for me, at this point, 44 years ago. Technology then was not going to be nearly as archaic as it was at the time of my daughter's birth. So obviously she came through perfectly, had no problems, no issues, and we made it through that. But that was only because I had a pediatric cardiologist involved that really helped us out. And when my son was born 4 years later, we repeated the same process. He was there. He was ready to help. He was there to reassure and to give us confidence. So yes, I was concerned about that, and it is a chance that could be the case. So if you're a patient who was congenital, you might want to be sure that you or your spouse, whomever, that they have some testing and get ready for those types of things, and just prepare your mind and the physicals too. Nonetheless, next question here, question number 4. How long did you wait for transplant? Well, I've shared this here on the program before. In one sense, I waited for transplant for 38 years because I was a congenital patient. In another sense, I waited for transplant for about 6 years. 6 years, because from the time I found out that transplant was definitely going to be in my future till the time I got a transplant was 6 years. So from 32 to 38 years, I really knew transplant was the next step. Now, I went through the evaluation process 4 times. I talked about that many a time. It was just a matter of timing to get that done. But once I was actually listed, I was on the transplant list for about 10 months, exactly 265 days. Now, that's kind of in the middle there. Average heart transplant wait times vary, from state to state, from region to region, according to your blood type, tissue type. So many variables come in, so it's really hard to pinpoint an answer to what is average. I think average right now is about 18 months. Depending on what status level you're at, you'll wait a shorter or longer time. Obviously, a status 1 is going to wait a shorter time than hopefully a status 3 or 4. Yeah, but nonetheless, I waited 265 days, about 10 months. I was on IV milrinone that whole time, and it wasn't fun, but I'm thankful that I didn't wait any longer than I did. So question number 4, how long did I wait? 265 days. Question number 5 here. Now I'll read you what it actually said, and I'll change a word. It says, you brag a lot, keyword brag. You brag a lot about your transplant center. How did you choose them? Well, I've changed the word brag to talk. I do talk a lot about them. probably brag, I guess. But I do really, really enjoy and appreciate my transplant center, UAB Hospital, Birmingham, Alabama. Now, the way I chose them was because when I was born with that congenital heart defect, that's where they sent me. So I had been with UAB for my entire 44-year life. Okay, that's really how I chose them. Now, as far as how you were to choose one, say that you've not already been exposed to to even a cardiologist or a pulmonologist or, whatever your transplant needs may be. Maybe you're not already in with a team and you don't have that exposure. How do you choose one? Well, I'll make this short and sweet, and I may make a whole video on this later. I chose my transplant center, or would choose one if I had to now, based on 3 things. Number 1, I kind of jotted this down. I would look at location. I would look at likability, and I would look at longevity. Now, by location, that's easy. Try to choose the closest transplant center that can handle your case to your home, okay? I know that a lot of times people have to go halfway across the country or all the way across the country to get a transplant. I get that, but it's a whole lot easier when you can go more nearer than having to go farther away, okay? And I've actually had friends that had transplants far away, and then post-transplant, after the struggle of getting the clinic visits, maybe by airplane, was not working out or falling ill and not being able to get to their transplant center, I've actually known people who got up and moved. Mark Johnson is one of those. Had to get up, and he and his family picked up and moved to be closer to his transplant center. So I would say definitely location matters. Get as close as you can to a team that can handle your case. That second part of that, likability, I think this is big, okay? You've got to get to know your physicians. You've got to know your team. You've got to like them, okay? A lot of times, especially in the medical world, someone will go to a doctor, and this may be just a general practitioner, and they'll say, well, I really don't like the fella, but he does what I need. No. Doctors need bedside manner to an extent, and that matters because in those crunch moments when you're desperate for answers or when you need something to happen more quickly, it's better to have a connection. It's better to have a friendship, if you can even have it. The likability of the doctors matters more than you think. Now, I get it. They're professionals. Oftentimes, their minds perform at a really high level outside of the realm we're familiar with every day, but likability matters. And then behind that, I would put longevity. That's when I would research. If the one closest to me had likable doctors and a great team, then I would say, now, what's the longevity? What are the average lifespans of people who have transplants here? And I get it. A lot of people nowadays are running that totally backwards from what I'm suggesting. They're looking up on Google, what are the best numbers? What are the best percentages of survival rates at 1, 3, and 5 years? That's how they measure hearts anyway. What are the best survival rates? And I want to go there. And I don't care if it's halfway around the world, I'll go there. I understand that. But keep in mind, those numbers that they're posting, one could be skewed. Let's be honest. They could be skewed. It could be a transplant center that's doing low-risk cases as opposed to high-risk cases, so they're going to get better numbers. But it could also come down to the fact that you need to remember that percentages are based on averages, not based on you. So one team might be able to handle your specific case better on average than, say, another one that has great numbers, okay? So don't look and see where all these statistics and numbers and averages are. Don't look there first. Look for what's the closest, who do you like, and then look at the averages. Obviously, if UAB Hospital had 45% survival rates, I would never have gone there, okay? I get that. But thankfully, they were well up in the top percentile anyway, so it made the decision easier. So my transplant center, I chose them based upon I was born into it, but also if I had to choose them now, I would still choose them based upon those characteristics. Number 6 here, what has transplant, I'm sorry, I can't read. I'm dyslexic if I hadn't said that already. What has transplant changed the most about your life? Well, obviously, I'm a heart transplant recipient, so prior to that, I had heart failure, and so it's given me energy, it's given me stamina, it's given me opportunity, and I think what I really, really consider and appreciate the most is time, okay? Having time to spend with my wife, my children, and I've said before here, my family has expanded. We've adopted 3 children since my transplant, so I've gone from 2 children to 5 children. Having time with my family, that is the area in which it has affected me most and impacted me most. And that's really, where I think this is all worth it. I'll be honest with you, and I'm not saying anything negative about organ transplant, but if I did not have a family who wanted me to go through this process, who encouraged me to go through the process, who, needed me to go through the process, I wouldn't have fooled with it. I wouldn't have done it. I would have just taken my chances, rolled the dice, whatever you want to call it, and went with what I had and tried to live as long as I could with the heart that I was born with. And when that ended, I'd just be done. I wouldn't have considered it. But because of them and because of the possibility and opportunity that I thought I could be afforded and I have to spend time with my family, it made it all worth it. So what has transplant changed the most about your life? It's given me time. That's what it's changed. That's wonderful. Now, question number 7 here, and we'll stop right here. Question I have answered a time or two. Do you use a pill box to organize your medications? Now, I'm different, okay? I'm totally different from most. The answer to that is no. I do not use a pill box to organize my medication. There are a few caveats, a few reasons behind that. I won't try to go too in depth in it, but basically, I wanted to learn my medications inside and out. The best thing you can do for yourself is to really grasp and understand your medications. And you can more easily do that if you're drawing your medications out on a daily or sometimes 2-3 times a day basis straight out of the bottles. That is, you pull the bottle out, you see the label, you see what the pills look like, you see the name of the medication. You really can think back to what it's being used for, how it functions in your overall plan, medication bag, you get a daily grasp of that. If you put them in pill boxes, you're only visiting your medicine every week, or some people even I know do pill box loading every 2 weeks. You're only going to that every week or so. You're just not getting the familiarity with the medicine. That matters because the first time you go down to the pharmacist or maybe the mail order, whatever, and you get it and the pill doesn't look right, it doesn't look like it used to, you've got work to do, okay? Don't ever put a pill in your mouth that doesn't look right. Doesn't matter what the label says. Go ahead and get in a pill app or go online, look up the coding on the pill. I'd advise you to do that. Find out if that's the medication. Is it the medication? Is it the right dose as far as milligrams? What are the general instructions for this? How many times do I take it a day? Maybe they've lowered the dose, but I've got to take it 3 times a day instead of 2. Check into that, examine that. And that's something you get out of daily, looking at your bottles. In addition to that, you're the first one to know when a medication is running low because you're looking in the bottle and you see it. If you got a full pill box over here stocked up for a week or two, you notice that you have pills in the pill box and you may not realize that the bottle that backed that pill box up is totally empty. And so you may run out without knowing you were about to run out. And again, by going in that medicine bottle every day, several times a day, I constantly see that. So I can tell it's getting close to the bottom. I need to order. That's what I do. And then the last thing here, and I really, really encourage this, pill boxes, if not done very, 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 I like the word very, very, very carefully here, can really cause a problem. I actually have a friend, unfortunately, who lost her life because the medication was wrong at the pharmacy. She didn't check up on that end, or at least her family didn't check up and didn't realize it. They stocked the pill box full for like a week or two, and then she just took the pills that were in the slots, and she popped the pills, and then after the first week, fell ill, went in the hospital. Nobody knew what was wrong. She was in severe rejection. They got her fixed up, patched up. She goes back home, popped the pill. She's back in severe rejection again. And now they discovered that one of the pills in the pill box that had been pre-stocked for a couple of weeks was the wrong pill. And she wasn't taking an anti-rejection drug that she needed at all because the pill that was in the pill box was like some kind of sinus medicine or something. The wrong pill was there. And if it had been a daily picking up of the bottle, a daily check, someone may have noticed that, okay? So I think it makes a difference. You're going to know when you're running low. You're going to be able to order them. You got several times a day to say, hey, should have ordered it this morning. Forgot I'll order them now. And then on top of that, you're so familiar with your medicine, you spot those mistakes very quickly. Anyway, I'm passionate about that last question, if you couldn't tell. These are just a few questions that I've been asked. There are many more that I could have answered, but again, already emailed these people or replied back. I just thought I would stop and share these with you. So there are a few questions here that I want to ask you, same as me. Go ahead and comment below. Where did you go first after transplant? What's the first thing you did when you left the hospital? Where did you go? I like to hear from that. Other questions that you might want to answer as well. What's the most important thing that you wish you had known about transplant? What can you share to help to build our community and to help us to understand one another? I think you've probably answered question number 7 as well. Do you use a pill box? Use a pill box, bottle, bag? How do you go with that? I'd like to hear your opinion. Anyway, thank you so much. If you stayed to the end, if you have stayed to the end, are you there? Oh, my alarm's going off. If you have stayed to the end, comment below the video and say, I'm here. I'm here. If you'll do that, I'll put your name in a drawing, a special drawing, and give you a Transplant Helper t-shirt, okay? How about do that for me? Comment, I'm here. Comment some of these other things as well, but put the words, I'm here, and your name goes in a special drawing, and you're the only one who knows it because you watched all the way until the end. Got some suggested videos I'll pop up here on the screen next to me in a moment. Go ahead and check those out. Until next time, stay stronger, friends.